That black man laid down with that white woman, or that white man laid down with that black woman, when those 23 chromosomes from each of them mixed, that was not a 50-50 split, because a recessive gene cannot hold its weight against a dominant gene. So when an African child is created, they are 99.999% African. And that means if I see your mother who's not African, I'm going to respect her because she's your mother. And she's entitled to that respect. And you're going to respect her because that's the womb that bore you. But when it comes to the political work that's done for Africans, your mom has to respectfully understand you cannot be present in this meeting.
Pan-Africanism is the black man's oldest formal ideology. It is an ideology that posits that all people of African descent are members of one human family, and that we should identify principally as members of that human family. So that means that being African is more important and should be more primary than being Muslim or Christian, than being a Mason or an Elk, than being a member of any fraternity. Than identifying with any particular language, any particular culture. Being African is our primary identity. And what is also fundamental to Pan-African thought, and Garveyism as the highest expression of Pan-Africanism, if you will, is that as Africa goes, so goes all of Africa's children. So there is no elevation of the African in Britain without an elevation of the African in Africa. There is no elevation of the black man and woman in America without an elevation of Africa. And the reason that is when you look at nations and the respect that are given to their citizens globally, the respect that you get is a reflection of the respect that your mother country gets. So when we look around the world, we see Chinese people are generally respected no matter where they go. They might be despised in secret, but in public, they are respected. Why? Because China is respected. And so the energy and power of China, okay, is carried by every citizen of that country.
And I agree with the queen who spoke just before me. She's right. We have to be more inviting of so-called mixed race Africans into revolutionary circle. Because if we don't bring them into us, the enemy will recruit them into his army. And we have President Obama to be shown as the best example of what can be done with a mixed race African.
Do you think we've got a black president, or do you think we've got a half white president? How do you see it? How does your organisation see somebody like that?
Okay. First off, we have to recognize something. The mixed race phenomenon, the describing of Africans with a white mother or father as biracial or multiracial or mixed race, is a rather new phenomenon. When you look at the history of slavery, African slavery, in both Europe and America, you will see that the child who was the product of the rape of the slave master was still considered to be a member of the African stock, although they may have been called mulatto, to be identified as such. They were not segmented from the other blacks. We don't see a separating out of the so-called biracial African, and I say so-called because he was never called biracial before then. So I, again, agree with Marcus Garvey that if you have one African parent or two African parents, you are an African. So we don't get into biracial. You're black.
White supremacy is about white control, power, and authority. And if it is in the best interest of white supremacy to put a black face in place to protect white power, that's what it will do. And many of you fell for that strategy.
One quick thing I wanted to go back to Obama.
Yeah.
The reason I'm disappointed in President Obama has nothing to do with his mother being a white woman, because as I said, a so-called biracial African is an African to me. You see, you mentioned you were biracial. Yeah. You're just as much my sister as a sister from the middle of the Congo, blue, black, purple. African is African.
Oh, thank you.
I'm disappointed in President Obama because he has done absolutely nothing to not only assist black folk, but he's done nothing to stop the abuse against black folk. Look at all the young black defenseless males that have been murdered in America, and the president hasn't put forth one piece of legislation about police brutality. Not one thing. The Michael Brown, the Trayvon Martins, the Eric Garners, the young brother in Charlotte. That situation just happened in Charlotte, North Carolina. Sandra Bland in Texas, okay, who was a follower of my work. Rest in peace to her. All these black men and women, boys and girls being murdered, and the president of the United States doesn't do anything, while at the same time he aggressively champions the causes of lesbians, white women, homosexuals, illegal immigrants, and does nothing for the people who built the country. That's why I'm disappointed in him, not because he's biologically quote unquote half white. I'm disappointed in him because he's psychologically all white.
In the Garvey movement, we don't believe in mixed race. We don't believe that black men should be with anything other than a black woman. In Garvey's life, you cannot join the UNIA if your wife didn't look like your mother. Why are we changing up now?
Yesterday, Dr. Umar Johnson made some, I wouldn't say controversial because it's his opinion, but he went along the lines of separatism in some ways. And how do you feel about that kind of, for what Dr. Johnson, do you agree with what he said, or do you have issues with what he said?
Well, I don't believe in a separatist movement. I believe in a holistic movement. And we've got issues that we need to deal with as melanated people. And those issues we have to find solutions to. And we need to move forward in providing those solutions and delivering them to people that are melanated. And with that in point, we live on a planet not separated from anything. This is just one living organism out of all the solar system. So for us to live peacefully together, everybody on the planet needs to live peacefully. So that means everybody needs to be integrated into that process, because I don't believe you can have one people living peacefully on a planet and another people living unpeacefully on a planet and feel that there's a peaceful settlement to be resolved. I truly believe that for all of us to live peacefully, the Pan-African to live peacefully on this planet, everybody needs to live peacefully on this planet so that we can experience that peace together.
My dad was from Nigeria, but he absolutely despised West Indian people. He always told us they were slaves, they were inferior, not to mix with them. And in 1991 I went to Nigeria to meet his family for the first time, and I was so shocked and disappointed by the way I was treated as a returning daughter of Africa, which is how I saw it. The first day I was there, I went for a walk in the street. A total stranger approached me and said, "You're half white, you better go home, they will beat you." The second day I was there, I was talking to a gentleman outside my auntie's house, and she said to me, "Oh, don't talk to that man, he's from the Ibu tribe." And the thing that shocked me was just how much tension, how much mistrust there is amongst the various ethnicities and tribes within Africa itself. And until Africa itself sorts out all its prejudices, all its past histories, that will make it very, very difficult for Pan-Africanism to exist. It's fine in Europe and America where there's far more cohesion between the various black Pan-African movement, but Africa itself has so many problems accepting each other as fellow Africans that until that is resolved, it will always be a problem.
Within the Pan-Africanist movement, I represent the Garveyite wing of that movement. And I will speak to you as a revolutionary Pan-African nationalist, because that's what Garveyites are. We are not integrationists, we are not multiculturalists, and we are not accommodationists. This is important and it must be stated. When you deal with Garveyism, to be clear, you're dealing with a movement that puts the needs of African people first. We are our #1 priority. We do not, and this is the protocol of the Garvey movement yesterday. It was the protocol of the Garvey movement when I was its Minister of Education. We do not form permanent alliances with any organization, and definitely not any other race or culture. And the reason it is in the policy of the Garvey movement not to establish permanent alliances is no other race of people has ever proven to be as interested in the African as the African is interested in herself. This has to be stated because in the historiography of Pan-Africanism, I've noticed over the past decade, it has been moving away from a race-first, unapologetically African position to one of Obamaism type of loving everyone on earth as much as we love ourselves. That's not Garvey. We respect every race. We hate no one, but we are our own priority. And we are unapologetic in saying that we are for the African thing only. Wishing other groups and movements goodwill does not take away from us being for the African thing. It's okay to wish goodwill to other people, but we must not be confused that when white folk or non-Africans attended the Marcus Garvey conventions, they attended them as guests, not members. There is no non-African membership in a Pan-African organization. If there's non-Africans in it, then it's not a Pan-African organization. Which takes us to another controversial tenet of Garveyism, and that is the refusal to accept non-African funding. One of the biggest contradictions of so-called Garveyites and Pan-Africanists here, there, and everywhere is claiming to be against white supremacy while you're being funded by white supremacy. The hand that pays is the hand that rules. You cannot be a Pan-African movement being funded by the government of Britain. You cannot be. It is a contradiction in ideology. The revolution will not be financed by your oppressor. It never was and it never will be. And we need to be clear about that. The mixed race African issue. What is the Garveyite position on that? The Garveyite position on the mixed race African is that there's no such thing as a mixed race African. The Garveyite perspective is that if you are of an African parent, if you are of African parentage, then you are an African child. We don't play the schisms and the isms. We don't do biraciality, multiraciality. Why don't we do that? Because during enslavement, there was no such thing as a biracial African. During enslavement, there was no such thing as a multiracial African. You were considered an N-word with the rest of us. There was no difference. Now, when they divided you out, they may have used mulatto as a grouping mechanism, but when it came to valuing the life, the so-called biracial African person's life was no more valuable than someone who was 100% full-blooded African. So why are we playing these games now? But we would argue, though, that for those who are of mixed racial ancestry, you must identify wholeheartedly with your Africanity, which does not dismiss the fact that your mother or father may be white. On the personal level, that's your ancestry. You got to get to know it, you got to get to understand it, but on the realm of politics, you must recognize that the world sees you as an African and nothing else. And I agree with the queen who spoke just before me. She's right. We have to be more inviting of so-called mixed race Africans into revolutionary circle. Because if we don't bring them into us, the enemy will recruit them into his army. And we have President Obama to be shown as the best example of what can be done with a mixed race African. We believe in independence. Pan-Africanists in general, Garveyites in particular, independence of government. We may run people for office, but we don't endorse parties. That's not Pan-Africanism. Because that party structure is a Eurocentric reality created to protect European imperialism. So why would you endorse it? It's okay to run somebody for office as a strategy. But don't let mainstream European electoral politics become your way of life. Remember, our goal as Pan-Africanists is not to get a black president. It's not to get a black governor. It's not for a black parliamentarian in a white system. It's to build our own governmental system for our people. We seek our own participation in someone else's. But I saw a lot of backsliding these past 7 years. I saw a lot of Pan-Africanists get fooled by the President Obama illusion. Oh yes. Die-hard Pan-Africanists, people who never red, black, and green. I saw them taking a second look at the red, black, and green and saying, well, maybe Obama is symbolizing a transformation away from totalitarian Europeanism to multiculturalism. How wrong they were. And their ignorance stemmed from the fact that they did not understand white supremacy. Because when you understand white supremacy, you recognize that the tactics may change. The strategies may be replaced. The particular behaviors may undergo some modification. But the purpose and principle of white supremacy is consistent. And for those of you who fell for the Obama shenanigan, it was because you didn't understand white supremacy. White supremacy is about white control, power, and authority. And if it is in the best interest of white supremacy to put a black face in place to protect white power, that's what it will do. And many of you fell for that strategy. 7 years before he was elected, I called it. I said, by the time this man leaves office, I said it at the African American Museum in Philadelphia, by the time this man leaves office, black folk, not just in America, but around the world, will be in a situation that is almost as worse as slavery. The anointing of Obama was not the signaling of a transformation. It was a time out for racism to regather itself, refuel itself, and in 2016, they're going to come out the gates wrong. And we got to be prepared for it. Well, why are we not multiculturalists? We're not multiculturalists because we don't recognize any other culture to be equal to ours because we are the creator of every other culture. If you know your history, where did multiculturalism get its impetus? First of all, it's a European brain product. And a lot of us are identifying with a lot of European brain products. Multiculturalism was invented at the turn of the century as an attack on African-centered education and approaches to historiography. So how can you be a Pan-Africanist and be a multiculturalist when multiculturalism was invented to kill the African-centered approach to world history? These are the contradictions we have to look at. This is why you have to study any ideological position you think you belong to. Know the history before you claim to be an adherent. Know the history before you claim to be an adherent. In the GARVEY movement, we don't believe in mixed race. We don't believe that black men should be with anything other than a black woman. In GARVEY's life, you cannot join the UNIA if your wife didn't look like your mother. Why are we changing up now? I'll give you something else that's controversial. Homosexuality and lesbianism. In GARVEY's day, you could not be a member if you were sexually confused. But I know GARVEYites today back off from that. You want to hide that. See, we want to pick and choose the principles of GARVEYism that we want to espouse. We don't want to lay them all out there. That doesn't mean we hate our homosexual brothers and sisters. I don't. I disagree with the lifestyle because it's anti-African. I disagree with the lifestyle because I know it's being funded by the World Bank, the IMF, to depopulate African people. I know our homosexual and lesbian brothers and sisters don't know how they're being used for something larger. They was never at no World Bank meeting. They don't belong to the Bilderbergs. But just because you was not at the meeting don't mean you're not a pawn in the game. And we got to recognize that. We believe in African family. Our whole universe is based on what? The balance of masculine and feminine energy. That is African reality. Masculine and feminine. Every atom in existence has a positive charge and a negative. What happens when you put two positives together? What happens when you put two negatives together? You destroy it. The Garveyite is unapologetic in his Africanity. But we need to be careful about something. And that is being armchair Pan-Africanist. There's this new thing that says you can be a Pan-Africanist and have no connection to Africa. How in the hell can that be? In fact, in America, we got a phrase for it. It says if you can't go to Africa in physical form, go in your mind. But you don't go to the Korean hair store for weave in your mind. You go for real. You don't go to Nike and Adidas in your mind. You go for real and you spend money in those stores. So how is it we can go to the Arab-owned business for real with money, and we can go to the Jewish-owned business for real with money, and we can go to the car lot and the clothing store and the weave shop with real money on our feet, real walking. But when it comes to connecting with Africa, we're going to go and dream about going, as if you can't afford to get there. Pan-Africanism is connection. And we have to recognize two significant contradictions of the Pan-African movement. Even Mr. Garvey fell a little short here. Number one, most great Pan-Africanists in history. Because remember, Pan-Africanism came to Africa, it was not started there. Nor was it started with Henry Sylvester Williams. The grandfathers of Pan-Africanism were from the States. John Brown Rushworth, the great Jamaican who came to America by way of Jamaica, the first black man to earn a college degree, the first black man to publish a newspaper in America, Jamaican-born John Brown Rushworth, a great Pan-Africanist before Garvey, but even in Jamaica they don't know his name. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner from Georgia, who taught the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a child that God was black. That's where Mr. Muhammad got it. That's where Marcus Garvey got it. He lived before Garvey. Martin Delaney from Pennsylvania, the one who invented the phrase Africa for the Africans. Garvey took it and added those at home and those abroad. The reason Garvey succeeded in America is because the Pan-African groundwork had been laid. Alexander Crummell, W.E.B. Du Bois' first teacher on Pan-Africanism, who spent 20 years in West Africa, the longest sojourn of an American-born Pan-Africanist. So the groundwork was laid. That's why Garvey survived in America where he couldn't do it in Jamaica. Because in America, you're either black or white. You mix race, that's black. But in the Caribbean, I have a more sophisticated color hierarchy. You have octoroons and quadroons and aliens and all kind of stuff. But in America, it's one or the other. So it was easy to accept a program of race first in America, whereas in the Caribbean, it would be more difficult because being a shade lighter meant you get a better job. Being a shade lighter means you might get accepted to college. So it was a lot different there. That's why it struggled there, but it found fertile ground in America. Pan-Africanism means oneness. Oneness with all Africans. When you say you Pan-Africanist, you're saying I'm placing my membership in the African family first. And that is more important than being a Muslim. It's more important than being a Christian. It's more important than being a Mason. It's more important than being an Igbo or Yoruba or a Hausa or Zulu or a Xhosa. I'm African first. That's Pan-Africanism, which is another contradiction. Because some of y'all in here, let's be honest, in the States, you're more linked up with your cultural tribal identity than you are with your African identity. Let's call it what it is. Some of you more Jamaican than you African. Let's call it what it is. Some of us more black American than we African. Let's call it what it is. Some of you identify more with a slave ship puts you down at and not where it picks you up at. Let's call it what it is. The Pan-Africanist is a statesman and a stateswoman of African affairs. We're different from everyone else. They still family, but we don't see the world through the same eyes. as the Hebrew, or the Nation of Islam, or the Gazaners, or the Nawapians, all of whom we respect, but we do it a little bit differently because we dealing with family on the global level. So we don't just deal with what's going on with blacks in Britain. We don't just deal with what's going on with blacks in the Caribbean. We don't just deal with what's going on with blacks in the continent. We step back, look at the whole chessboard, and we plot and strategize and say, based on what's going on all 7 continents, this is what we should be doing. And some people who don't understand politics will say, well, aren't you Pan-Africanists creating such a big thing that you'll never be able to get anything done? Don't you need to chunk it down into chunks? Yes, with the implementation of the program. But no, with the ideology and vision. Because if you are a Pan-Africanist, you believe something. And that is that fundamental to the improvement for African life is a collective approach to the solutions that must involve all Africans everywhere at the same time. If you Pan-Africanist, you believe Black UK does not fix some problems until Black Africa does. If you Pan-Africanist, you believe that Black Canada, Black America, Black Caribbean cannot rise without the mothership of Africa herself. If you Pan-Africanist, you believe that the respect we get around the world is a direct reflection of the disrespect shown to our mother continent. Why are Chinese respected in the UK? Chinese are respected in the US, the UK, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Canada, wherever they go. Same thing with the Arab, wherever they go. Same thing with the East Indian, wherever they go. Why is it they are respected no matter where they live? Not just in some places, but everywhere. Because they have a mother country that demands respect. They have a mother country that will not allow any of its natives to be disrespected by a foreign government. We're doing this whole thing wrong. Even Dr. King had to look at it towards the end of the civil rights movement and say that in order for us to fix this black thing, we're going to have to play a hand in that African thing. So when we say Pan-Africanist, we're looking at the grand chessboard. You got to realize something about Garvey. He's the only leader you had since slavery. The only one who led globally. Everyone else was regional. They were great men, but they might have led something in the UK. They might have led something in the US. They might have led something in Africa. They might have led something in the Caribbean. But His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, the elected provisional president of Africa, was leader of black people all over the world. Another contradiction. From John Brown all the way down to Garvey. And Brother Beanie Elder talked about it earlier. And that is our rejection of African ancestral veneration. One of the shortcomings of Pan-Africanism, study them all. Very few Pan-Africanists, including those from Africa, venerated their ancestors. And I'm saying here and now that that's one thing that we got to fix. We got to make that right. Because in order for us to win this war against white supremacy, we're going to need every soldier we can have. The ones we can see and the ones we can't see. Brothers and sisters, Pan-Africanism is about being proud to be African. Not just knowing your history. I know a lot of sellouts who know their damn history. You know how many scholars we got in America who knows history inside and out, but has no race pride? Knowing your history doesn't impress me. There's white historians with PhDs in African studies. That's intellect. Pride is a spiritual electrification of the intellectual information. Brothers and sisters, education. I'm going to round it out here because I'm an educator and I'm a psychologist The Queen was absolutely correct. We are a traumatized people. And you know what's so unique about the trauma of the African? The reason it's so difficult for us to heal from our trauma is because the source of the trauma has not stopped. So we're looking for healing while we're being traumatized. What woman being violated by a man, God forbid, what woman being violated by a man can begin to heal while the man is still inflicting the abuse? The timeout hasn't come yet. And we need the timeout to come. That's where the hate comes from. The pain, the anguish, the reason we have so much violence in the community is due to three primary causes. Number one, miseducation. We haven't been properly prepared for life. That includes properly prepared to understand white supremacy and to navigate it. So for those of you who are educators of African children, homeschool or real school, if you're not teaching them about white supremacy, what it is, how it operates, and how to navigate it, you're miseducating those children. So miseducation. Two, economic castration. The black man can't get no work. The black man can't get no job. After the civil rights movement, the white man came up with a new strategy. They said since black folks want to go to college so bad, since black folks want to wear a shirt and tie to work so bad, this is what we gonna do. Because at the end of the civil rights movement, black men were tired of working with their hands. Black women were tired of scrubbing floors or washing clothes. They said, I want to do something that uses my head more than my hands. So the white man said, let's accommodate that. We're going to give them degrees and send them to college. We're going to make everybody qualifiable for a student loan to go get an education. Have you ever wondered why you could go into a bank here in the UK and ask for a loan to start your business and you get denied? But if you ask for a loan for college, you get approved? Have you ever wondered why you go into the bank and ask for a loan to build an industry, you get denied? But if you ask for a loan to buy a car, you get approved? Why is it I can't get a loan for business, but you approve me for a student loan that's worth more than the business loan I was asking for? You approve me for a car loan that's worth more than the business loan I was asking for. It's because if they invest in your education or invest in your transportation, they investing in themselves. Because the interest rate on that student loan and the car note interest rate is going to have you indebted to the bankers for the next 10 or 20 years. They're not going to give you money to separate from the system. They're only going to give you money to become more dependent upon it. Which is why when Marcus, just before he made his transition, Mr. Garvey was plotting an international pan-African bank. Why was he doing it? Because he said, I could put the ships on the water, but when we make money with the Black Star Line, we got to put the money in white banks. So even if everyone in this room has your own business right now in Manchester, we are Black Wall Street, we booming, we got supermarkets and hospitals, gas stations and distribution networks. What do you do with the profit from your business? You put it in Morgan Stanley, Chase Manhattan, these European-owned banks. So even though it looked like you're the captain of your destiny, you're not, because the white man is able to float loans off of your black money. That's right. Under the laws of banking, you can loan $100 for every dollar deposited. So if you got $1 billion black dollars deposited times 100, our money's still working for the enemy more than it's working for us. So to talk about a black business without a black bank to capture the capital, you only dealing with half the story. We need black banks and we need black schools. How can you call yourself a revolutionary when the mind of your child is being exploited by the oppressor? How can you call yourself a revolutionary when your child goes to school and learns the songs and the pledges of Britain, gets totally Europeanized? And then when they graduate from high school, you want to get mad at them for acting white, but you're the one who subjected it to them in the first place. No white money, no white participation, no white romance. That's Garveyism. I'm giving it to you. That's Garveyism. I know some of y'all that fell for the multicultural movement. Loving other people as much as you love your own, that's crazy. Find me a European Jew who loves a German as much as himself. Find me one. Nobody does. I didn't say hate nobody. No, that's not African. We don't hate, but we do understand. Don't hate them, respect them. They just need to understand why we got to do this ourselves. You know why? Because when a white person comes into a solution meeting for black folk, even if they well-meaning, black people, because of the white Jesus complex, we will automatically start looking to the white person without even recognizing it to deliver us from evil, because we've been taught that they are the greatest. So when they come amongst you, your Willie Lynch chip is automatically activated the minute they walk in the room. So in conclusion, we got something new we're doing in the States right now. My organization is Team Pan-African, and we have a research and repatriation task force. We'll be looking for brothers and sisters around the world who are interested in investigating a particular African nation for repatriation feasibility. We have folks on Team Somalia, Team Ghana, Team Nigeria, Team Ethiopia, Team Kenya, Team Malawi, Team Congo, Team Zambia. What is the job of each team? Investigate the economics, investigate the stability of government, because we don't want to send Africans back home to a government that is in turmoil, where they can get caught up in somebody else's civil war. We got to investigate the structure, the minerals, the resources. What businesses will be most likely to thrive in Nigeria? Because the ones that may work in Nigeria may not work in Ethiopia. Africa is a very diverse continent. Not every country is ready to receive you. And so if you're interested in being a part of that, please get in contact with me. The other thing I want to say is this. Repatriation has been something pushed to the side by Pan-Africans. We love Africa, but we don't like going. We love Africa, but we don't like moving over there. We hate white supremacy, but we would rather fight the white man in the UK than help build our brothers and sisters back home. It is a contradiction. I'll be in South Africa next week for a 3-week tour. Cape Town, Pretoria, Zululand, Durban. Can't wait to go. Haven't been since '09. They invited me there. And every time I go to Africa, I don't care what country it is, the question is the same. If y'all love Africa so much, why don't y'all ever come to invest here? Let me explain something to y'all. African countries are well within their right not to trust us, because we have not proven that we can be consistent with any damn thing we do. They should be skeptical of you, because you have been under the white man so long. They have to make sure that they form an alliance with an authentic African and not a falsified European. You know what happened in Liberia when we went back. You know what happened in Sierra Leone when we went back. We became the oppressors against our own brother and sister because we were operating with a Eurocentric mentality. Marcus Garvey never said that every African should go back home. He never said that. There was no such thing called a Back to Africa movement. Never. The media called it that. Mr. Garvey said only those who can be of use, which is only 20% of you in here. You're not going to Africa with your perm, your weed, you a man with a boyfriend, girl with a girlfriend. Africa don't need that. You go with basketballs and video games and tweeting. Africa don't need that. You cause more problems than you solve over there. As far as I'm concerned, anybody want to get repatriated, they got to go through an interview and a training process. In conclusion, I want to let you guys know tomorrow night at 5 o'clock at the West Indian Center here in Manchester, I will be giving an address to you all on the state of Black America, bringing you up to date on what's going on with your brothers and sisters in America. What does Dr. Umar Johnson think about Minister Farrakhan's march last weekend? Bring you up to date with what happened in Charleston, the Charleston massacre that took place the day after I left Charleston. Baltimore, Ferguson, I was just in St. Louis. I was on the phone with Michael Brown's dad for a few minutes. I'm going to bring you up to stuff, because just like y'all got to let me know what's going on here when I come, I got to let you know what's going on there when you come. So that's tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Which West Indian Center? Camera Road, 5 o'clock. Let me leave you with a quote from my ancestor, Frederick Douglass. And I'll be coming back to the UK in March because I want to do my Frederick Douglass play with me as Frederick Douglass. I got the wig and the clothes. Before I give you this Douglass quote, I want to give you one more tenet of Garveyism, and there's so many you can't cover them in one day. But one of them is equality for women. Does anybody in here know why the white women of America got the right to vote? I want my feminists to do your research. The reason the white woman of America got the right to vote in what year? 1920. Was it a coincidence? No! If you don't believe me, do your research. White women wrote the President of the United States protesting the right not to vote because Marcus Garvey, the leader of the Negro organization, has given black women not only the right to vote, they run their own military, their own auxiliary, and this Negro requires of every division of his organization that there be a lady president next to every male president. We don't need feminism, we need womanism. African family is what we need. Frederick Douglass said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, it never will. He said, those who are whipped the easiest are those who are whipped the most. Frederick said, for 20 years I prayed on my knees to God for freedom, but the good Lord gave me no freedom till I got up off my knees. He said, if you want respect, stop looking for pity, because the man who pities you will never respect you, and the man who respects you has no need for pity. He said, men may not get all they work for, but you must work for all that you get. Queen Mother Harriet Tubman said, I freed hundreds of slaves, could have freed millions more, but they didn't even know they were slaves. Marcus Garvey was asked, are you an African or are you a Jamaican? Are you an African or are you a Jamaican? Are you an African or are you a Jamaican? And in response to that question, His Excellency, leader of the largest black organization in modern history, the man who gave us the red, black, and green, put ships on the water, put so much fear in the Europeans that he had to create the Council on Foreign Relations. Garvey said, you asked me, am I an African or am I Jamaican? I answer you simply, I would never give up a continent for an island.